I guess a lot of guys haven't gone into a bank, given them fake documents, showed them a fake ID, and walked out with a check for $250,000. Yeah, that is a little odd.
You know,
Well, if he would have went back to work, and I've learned this over time, there's a couple things that are going to happen because we know officers who are involved in multiple incidents. You know, as an officer, like we were talking about earlier, where you see all these horrible incidents, you have a glass, and it just starts getting filled with water and filled with water. And then you have a critical incident such as these, that glass just spills over. So if you go back to work, young guys have an easier time in general. They have an easier time because their glass isn't filled.
they haven't seen as much at that point.
But the older guys have just seen all this stuff, and it spills over. So if you go back, you're going to become more aggressive. You're going to end up tuning somebody up for minor stuff because you see a threat in a different way than you did yesterday, pre-incident. So you're either going to get fired, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to be dead. I've heard this several times from different people. And I strongly believe that was with me, and I'm pretty sure it's the same thing with Mike, where you're just hyper alert of anything, and you're going to think the next person coming down the street without their headlights on because they forgot to put them on, oh my God, it's a stolen vehicle. Here we go again, and you're ready. You know, that's when you start getting in trouble. So you can't go back to work at that time. And now, officers are. I love my brothers and sisters in blue, but we're boneheads because too many of them, their primary identity is a police officer. And one day, being a police officer has an expiration date. One day that ends. Now what? Now what do? You just took my primary identity away. And that's why you'll see officers dying very soon after they retire. There's blue suicide is at an epidemic level where I think we're 1.7% per 100,000, and the national average it varies between 1% and 1.2% of everything, you know, every type of profession in the world. So we're always at a higher risk for this stuff because that's who we become. We become that officer. We only hang out with cops. We only trust cops. If you're an outsider, we're not gonna treat you the same way because you don't understand. So it's a dangerous situation, and it bothers me. So that's why Mike and I now, we deal with other officers because we've gotten through it. We deal with other officers who are involved in critical incidents, in first responders in general. And that's kind of the genesis of when we started this podcast. I started this podcast because I realized that my reaction to suffering was so wrong because I was constantly running away from it, trying to numb it. And I used the prairie fire analogy. So years ago, I read stupid shit. It was how to survive critical incidents or how to survive worst case scenarios. That's what the book was. And one of them in there was a prairie fire. So, you know, in Florida or New Jersey, we don't have a whole lot of prairie fires, but the way to survive it is you run towards that fire, because if you run away from it, the prairie fire gets bigger, right, and it ends up consuming you. Now, if you run towards it, you'll get through it. You'll be scarred. You'll be charred, but you're going to get through it and you're going to be alive.
Yeah, you're going to be in what's already been burned at the very least, and you're safe.
You're safe. But police officers, when we go through these critical incidents, we just numb it. They medicate us. We don't know how to deal with it, when all you have to do is just go up to it and own it and embrace it. And we've had conversations, Matt, and that's one of the things that I really do admire about you is what you did. Is what you've done in the past, you've owned it. You're like, yep, I did this stuff. That's what I did. You don't try to hide it. You don't try to make excuses for what you did, other than you like the lifestyle, which I can understand that.
Right.
But you've owned it. You know, this is what it is. If we can get people to own their damage, then they're going to see that on the other side of that damage, it's really a beautiful place.
We've taken it upon ourselves, everybody that, well, not everybody, but a lot of officers from New Jersey that were involved in shootings,
right,
will reach out to someone from their department. Say, listen.
Clandestinely, I mean, it's not through any organization other than the Suffering Podcast or our nonprofit Dental Development Project. That's all we do.
We because someone needs to tell you what's going to happen. You know, your department could tell you, okay, you know, they're going to take your gun. That's the other thing. They take your gun from you, which is emasculating at that point. You know, because now they're at the scene that night, they took my whole uniform, stripped me down to my underwear. I was standing in a command post in my underwear until they got me clothes.
Not an uncommon event for Mike.
Well, I did get promoted 3 times. So
Yeah, listen, in New Jersey, here's how you get promoted. You dirty your knees. That's pretty much what it is.
just standing in a command post in my underwear.
But
we do reach out to these different towns now, and we've helped quite a few people say, listen, here's what's going to happen. You know, and we take them step by step through what's going to happen. And I give them all my cell phone. I said, listen, you're going to start getting these weird feelings. You know, you're not going to know why you're thinking. Like Kevin was saying, he had a gun in his mouth. You know, part of post-traumatic stress is one of the things that come along with that is suicide. I always say I was too much of a pussy to kill myself. Still am, thank God. But I went to bed every night thinking, you know what? If I don't wake up tomorrow morning, probably wouldn't be such a bad thing.
it's an awful feeling, and it couldn't be more wrong, because when you're going through the deepest, darkest times of your life, it's so dark in there. You don't realize that there are other people walking alongside of you who have been through the same thing that can help you. They can see because they got night vision or whatever they have, but you can't see that there's people walking alongside of them, and that's kind of what we do now. It's what we do with our show. We show them that there's other people there. You just can't see them because it's too damn dark until you get to the end, and there's a little bit of light, and it shines a shadow on them.
Right.
So we've been able to, and we don't just highlight first responders, because everybody's got their own damage. Everybody's got their own suffering. So
I think one of the best shows we did was Gene.
So Gene Halberger. Gene Halberger lost his son to suicide. He's actually changed my vocabulary. It's not commit suicide because you commit a crime.
Right.
So that was always common lexicon that I always came out
Everybody
with.
does. Yeah,
He committed suicide. But you don't do that. It's very offensive to people who do. And most of them, they won't come up to you and say, "Oh, you're an asshole for saying that."
We've learned a lot of things that are offensive.
Yeah.
we say in our common vernacular.
They'll say, "No, it's you lose them to suicide." So Gene lost his 17-year-old son to suicide after being bullied on Instagram, and
in school.
And in school, and he found him. He took one of his shotguns and found him in the back.
The kid called his father that night and said, or that morning, and said, "Dad, I just want to tell you I love you."
Yeah. But when Gene came in the studio, and we had to stop recording many times.
Wait a second. I don't understand. You said who went and found?
So-
Gene went and
You
found
know,
the kid?
the kid called the father that morning. The father was at work.
His son
the
called.
son's name was Jimmy. The father is Gene. So Jimmy called Gene and said, "Dad, I just want to tell you I love you."
So he said, "I'll be right home." By the time he goes home, he goes in the house and he sees the shotgun case open, goes running around back, and his son had just done it. So half his head's missing, and he's doing. There's a gurgle. So when
death gurgle.
when somebody shoots themselves, it's not quick and painless most of the time.
Because your heart's still beating and the blood's still flowing.
Blood's coming out. It's this guttural groan coming out of them. And he saw his son doing that, and it destroyed him. They're like it would any parent.
Right.
So Gene comes in and he tells this just awful story that it's called The Ultimate Suffering. When he left our studio because he had let it out, and we had to stop recording numerous times.
Well, he never talked about it before.
Yeah,
he
never
openly
went through
talked
any
about
media. He just sort of took a liking to us. He came out of our studio and he had a 4-hour ride home, and he gives us a call and he says, "You know what? That was the most peaceful ride home," because he finally just gave that pain and suffering in his life just a hug and said, "You know what? I can release it." And since then, he's done it a couple other times, and he feels better. So there's something to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not totally full of shit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Maybe a little bit.
No, I can understand talking about stuff that bothers you.
Right.
You know, it's, so I mean, like just from like going to prison and talking about, just different things as a child and different things that, I had gone through, and people that, obviously people that I hurt and people that I lost, while I was in prison. Like, it's funny because like there was a psychiatrist. I went to a program called RDAP. And so you have to meet with like a psychiatrist. And so I had to meet with her all the time.
RDAP, I'm familiar with that program. The RDAP Dan, who's Dan Weil.
Yeah, Dan Wise.
Dan Wise.
Yeah. So I had, so I would meet with them all the time. And she used to say all the time, like, look, if you talk about it, you'll feel better. You'll get, you'll get better at telling the story, or you'll get better at being able to talk about it and express it without breaking down and crying and getting upset. And so far, I found that to be bullshit because I, to this day, like every time there's certain things I talk about, if they come up in the podcast or I talk about them, immediately start crying. Just immediately, like just
you
tears.
will.
Me,
Yeah.
To this, I could talk right now, and tears would start coming down my face, and I know exactly what those things are. Like I'll steer clear of them, and I can. It happens all the time. I've never gotten better.
Well,
and
we
but
call those
some people do though.
Yeah, we call those triggers.
Yeah.
You know, something will trigger you. You know, like Kevin said, he went to a comedy movie, heard a loud noise.
Yeah.
You know, right after my shooting, my daughter was running track in high school. The starter's pistol. You know, I had to look at the starter every time a race started. One time I had my back to the starter when I first went, and that starter pistol went off. I almost ran out of the stadium.
But the more you tell it, there's a lot of validity into what this RDAP program is telling you. Because the more you tell it, it's like a release.
Yeah.
It's not a desensitizing.
Yeah. No, I always feel better directly afterward, but you know the problems still exist and they're still there. So for me, it's not over. You know what I'm saying? Certain things aren't over.
But a lot of this will never be over. It's part of who you are. It's part of one of your scars, or as we call it, one of your dents now. You know, we call ourselves all dented individuals. We have a lot of dents in us. That's a dent that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. It's all how you take that dent and work with it.
Right.
You know, it's how you get over it, and that's all part of what we did. You know, I was saying all the time. You know, they were sending, my department was sending me to all these therapists, and to me, it was just rehashing. It was go and tell the same story over and over. And the one therapist we talked about before had no clue what was going on. So he'd sit there and I'd tell him the whole story, and he said, "Well, how you feeling?" "Well, you know, told him all of my different feelings that I had. And he said, "Why are you feeling like that?" I said, "You're the fucking one that's supposed to tell me why I'm feeling like that." So I was like done and over with him.
But when you speak to another person you would probably have a inborn camaraderie with somebody who came out of prison versus, you know, with us, we deal with things a little bit differently than the normal person. Like if you were to tell a story about something that made you tear up or made you start crying,
Right.
Matt, it's going to be all right. All right, let's figure this out together. He starts crying because it's happened many times. Pussy, what are you doing?
Right.
It's happened many times. But again, it's going back to that dark humor where that's how, listen, I identify with what you're feeling. I understand what you're feeling. So let's work this out together. It's the same thing. It's just said two different ways.
Right.
And that's how we work through stuff. But the funny thing about, you know, dented individuals is we can still operate. We can still move forward. We're just not as pretty as we once were, but we're still functional.
Right.
And that's so we started a nonprofit out of the Suffering podcast called Dental Development Project to help these people because we're doing all this stuff. So we're like, let's name it. Let's do it together. And so far we've had a lot of success, and on a small scale, but we've had a lot of success.
Right.
How did we even come up with that name though?
Oh Christ. So he's going to make me give him accolades about him coming up with a name because his ego's huge, man.
And the slogan.
I always say, listen, I combat that by saying I started the podcast prior to Mike coming on. He came on at episode, I don't remember what the episode was.
Episode 9.
Yeah.
Thanks. Highest downloaded episode.
Yeah,
yet,
so
anyway.
I forget what the episode was. But I always say our success today is because I brought you in.
Right.
Because
It's all me.
It's all me. I'm the genesis of everything.
He was getting like 4 downloads like before.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
him, his wife, his kids.
But when he came in, it was funny because he came in and I'm like, you know what? There's something there. There's some meat there. And
Yeah,
then
you have a good chemistry with certain people.
right, and you know, you're sitting down in front of somebody who we had dinner last night, but I don't know you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to sit down in front of somebody and make them feel comfortable in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, however long you sit around and bullshit. It's tough. With 2 people there, it's really very easy. Like what you do is different than ours because you're alone doing it. It's tough. People don't realize that.
Well, I I mean, I only disagree because I'm lucky because the people that I'm typically sitting across from were in prison. Mm-hmm. And just like you said,
Yeah.
there is that
A common bond.
yeah, absolutely. You know, you get there and you've been through a shared experience, and so there's just this immediate connection and you know, trust, and you know, you sit down with them and you start talking and you have shared experience. That shared experience it changes everything.
Well, it's like Kevin. It's the same thing with like law enforcement. You know, we could just look at each other and kind of give them like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Same thing with you and you know and other inmates. You know, you have that experience and you could play off of each other like that.
It's nice. It's not. You know, there's one, you know, there's so many things like you don't have to break down and explain what this means. You
Yeah,
can just talk in your typical vernacular, and they totally understand. As opposed to like when you said the bolo. Like I know what a bolo is, but most people don't know, and so you're like, what that means is this, and what that means. We'll see what that happens when this happens. No, you can't go back to work. You have to do this and this. And with another cop, you're just like immediately. So what happened? You just go through it, and the story doesn't take 2 hours. It takes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Well, it's even terminology. So you can talk to somebody from prison and say, hey, what did you think about whatever process you had to go through with police? It's like, oh yeah, I got in a modified Weaver stance. I was ready to,
right.
You know, I was in the shooting position. I was using a SIG P220 45 caliber, stuff like that. Like it just, you can tell the story in a little bit different way. One of the things that I've learned from podcasting and from being on different interviews is I have to respect the fact that people don't know that terminology.
Yeah.
So I have to explain it a little bit more. And
I was just gonna say it's funny. You'll meet somebody else who gets out, like if they just got out. You'll say like, you know, how do you feel around 4 o'clock? And they're like, oh, bro, I still get uncomfortable. Like I know I'm supposed to be in my cell waiting, like for count. You know, if you say, hey, how much? You know, hey, what about this? What about that? There are little things that you can say. And they go, oh man, I still feel uncomfortable with this, or oh no, I'm way, but like I don't even bother me anymore, bro. That didn't even, you know. So there's that's great. There's
Part of that life that you lived.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, and especially in prison, like prior to that, like there's all kinds of stuff that I have no, like if you're like a drug dealer or something, I have no real understanding of exactly what's going on, but. You know, I do know that if I talk to some guy in prison and I say, you know, you still wake up at 5, and they'll go, yeah, that's when the COs turn their lights on. It doesn't matter that just like with even my girlfriend is like, she's like, you're waking up at 4 o'clock. She's like, do you ever sleep? And I go, I can't sleep past 5. I absolutely cannot be in bed past 5. That's when the COs turn the lights on. Like I just can't do it.
The only thing that's changed for me with police work is I used to be able to stay up all night. I can't. I've done it a couple of times. I don't like it. I can't stand it. You know, you work a midnight shift, and there's certain rules that you have to follow personally as working midnight shifts. It's the one thing I've lost, and thankfully I have lost it because it's unhealthy to work midnights. It's unhealthy to stay up that whole time, drinking coffee, doing whatever you're doing. That's the one thing that's going away from me. Everything else pretty much stays the same, the different habits.
So do you like doing the podcast? Like after you do the podcast, when the people leave, do you feel good about it, or you feel...
It's therapy for us.
Right.
It is total therapy for us. We hear these different things, and we get a new perspective on different parts of suffering, and it feels good. It feels good. And we always say that, yeah, downloads are important for this business and stuff, but if we can just hit that one person. We just had the band Overkill. They were real big in the 80s. They've been around for 40 years. They've been around forever. We just had a guy, the rhythm guitarist, guy named Derek Taylor, came in. He's been a professional musician for 30 years. Played with Dee Snider. Played with Overkill for the last 20 years. But he has a autistic son with cerebral palsy who's nonverbal. He's 32 years old. Right. And this guy has been able to be at the top of his game and still be this super dad. I have the utmost respect for this guy. He's not a first responder, but he's got his own suffering. And when you listen to him, he's the type of guy who'll say, well, I don't really know what you really want me to talk about. I'm like, what do you mean? You got the toughest job in the world and you're still at the top of your career. What are you talking about? They tour the globe, and yet his son, every time his son sees him, it's his hero.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's what we're talking about. This is a guy, I mean, they're a thrash metal band, you know, like in the genre of like Metallica and the Slayer and all that. And they are huge over in Europe. You know, they play all these outdoor venues these music festivals, they could be playing in front of 70, 80,000 people. And here's a guy that's in Europe for, say, 3 months, and he's got this son at home that is totally dependent, nonverbal. You know, how do you keep your at the height of your game, worrying about your son at home?
And humble? Like, he's like, I don't understand. Yeah. It's just what he does. That's what his life is. So I just spoke with him the other night, and he got a message from somebody on social media about, hey, look, because he's also adopted. He goes, look, I was an adopted person. I adopted 8 kids, 3 of which are special needs, and you really gave me a lot of hope. Like, stuff like that, when you get stuff like that, you're like, okay, now that's why I'm doing this. And that's what we would continue to do. We'll continue it for as long as people download our episodes.
Right.
Because, again, without it, it's still fun. When it no longer becomes fun, then maybe we'll have a different discussion.
I think one of the best things is the relationship that we have with a lot of the former guests now.
They're all family.
Yeah. We tell them that when they leave, you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, you're part of our family now. Like we were talking about Gene Hallberger. He has a golf outing every year.
We go to that.
We go to that and just won't even, like last year, I didn't even tell him I was showing up.
Yeah.
Just showed up, and when he looked at me, his whole face just dropped. Came over and gave me a big hug. Because it's just all part of giving back. You know, our suffering is unto ourselves, but other people are going through suffering that need, whether it be a kick in the ass or you know, shoulder to cry on, you know, an ear to listen to you. And that's what we're there for. And that's what we do this podcast for, to help other people out. Listen, what I went through and what I'm still going through after that shooting, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Because it never goes away, just so everybody understands that. It subsides a little bit, but it never goes away.
You still have flashbacks, you know, for years. I mean, I still, like I said, one of the last things, when I put my head on a pillow every night, one of the last things I see is that guy's forehead just opening up, you know.
I thought it was the guy pulling his pants down in front of you.
Well,
Jesus.
That's usually right after that.
But think about this, though, Matt. So this podcast, we talk about everybody being family. We have a group of friends now that are second to none, and they are so diverse. You know, we're friends with the dirtiest cop in New York City and a mobster.
Last night, that was a group.
Yeah, that was a group last night. I mean,
thank God no cameras are out last night.
But they all, just like, they all own their damage. And we have pro sports guys. We have Derek, who's a professional musician. And then we have all of our first responders friends. It's an amazing thing. And Mike and I say this all the time. When we sit back, and you actually sit back and you reflect upon all this stuff, just think about all the people that have been in here. Just reflect upon it for a second. You're like, wow, I lived this. Like, what's going on? I'm nobody. I'm a piece of white trash from South Jersey. That's all I am. I'm still white trash, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it. Yeah. You beat me to it.
Yeah, no, I just disarmed you on that one.
Yeah, this has been a horrible podcast, bro. This is depressing. This is killing me. Like, I'm almost fucking in tears. Like, it's just listening to you guys. I mean, you guys seem to be having a good time, and this is like,
well, you know,
typically, like these guys, at least the criminals have fun stories. I'm sitting here like, he's tearing up. Your eyes are tearing up, and I'm thinking, gee, and I'm like, Jesus, this is horrible, bro.
It's like, what'd you say to me before? Last night, your girlfriend looked at me and said, "What's wrong with him?"
Yeah, what's going on with this guy?
Well, people
what's his story?
See, now you get to go upstairs and tell her what happened.
Yeah,
it's just you have to pivot. Yeah, they're horrible stories, and as cops, we had a lot of fun. Yeah. Like, I could sit here and tell you fun cop stories all the time, things where I laughed uncontrollably, stupid things.
Yeah.
But when I do these things, when I tell this story and it reaches that one person, that's what makes it. That's the light right there. That's what makes me feel better. That's what makes them feel better. And that's what this is all about. Like, if you want to hear fun cop stories, I got a million of them.
I was gonna say, like, you know, it's funny just interviewing people. It's like, sometimes I interview somebody, and, you know, like, as horrible as maybe horrible things that they've done, you know, but they have a great outlook, you know, on it. Or other things, people have done stuff that's not a big deal, and you can tell they're like depressed about it, and they're upset about it, and I feel bad, and they want to apologize, and they want to do, you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing when I do podcasts, and I'll go and look in the comments. Like, people are like, he's bragging, he's a piece of shit, he's a fucking this, he's that. It's you have a lot of people that say, oh my, he was brilliant, he was this, he was that. But it's like, people don't, like, nobody wants to see me sit here and, cry and be sad about my story. It's most of the time when I tell a story, it's entertaining. But what you guys are doing is you're out there trying to help people, and it's also therapeutic for you. And, so it's just a vastly different podcast. It's a different feel to it. That's all.
That's why we lighten it up with humor, just so you know. That's why Mike and I will bust each other's balls constantly, because it is serious. You're absolutely right. It is dark, but it doesn't have to be. We're trying to show people that your darkest of times don't need to be so dark.
Right.
You can have fun inside. You can still be a normal human being.
It's like when your critical incident defines you, that's when it bothers me. You know what I'm saying? I've done so many things in my career, not blowing smoke up my ass, but CPR saves, running into burning buildings. But I'm always known as the cop that shot someone.
Right.
Because I was the first one in Lyndhurst to ever do it, And that incident defines me now. That bothers the hell out of me. Nobody talks about all the other stuff I did in my life, in my career. I was telling Kevin, I used to drive down the street, see kids throwing a football in the street. I'd pull the police car over, get out in uniform, throw the football with them, and just to get the, hey, thanks, officer, I really appreciate it. That to me was what law enforcement was about. That's what I got in it for, to help people and to, be that local neighborhood cop, But now I'm defined by this incident.
Well, same thing with you, Matt. You're always going to be defined by what you did in the past. You make these beautiful paintings, you write these books, you do all this you do this podcast, you do all this other stuff, but you're always going to be defined by that.
Yeah, no doubt.
One of the guys we were with last night, John Elite, he will always be defined, no matter what he's doing now. And John is doing some really great stuff. Like, he'll go out and talk about the mythology of the mafia life, but he's always going to be defined as John Gotti's hitman.
Do you remember the kids that I forget the college, was it in Texas, or where they'd been blamed for raping a girl in a fraternity, and then it came out later that she made the whole thing up and it was all bullshit, and that it just never happened. And one of those kids, when they dropped the charges and said, "Wow, you're right, that's not what happened," and he said it wasn't, getting arrested and doing all the other stuff. He said wasn't what bothered me. He goes, what bothers me is the rest of my life, no matter what I do. He goes, I can raise a family, I could start businesses, I could do amazing things. He goes, when I die, my obituary will say, this is the kid that was accused of rape.
Yep.
He said, that will always be my obituary, no matter what.
But isn't that the way it always is? We label at the lowest common denominator.
That's a great way of saying it.
It's a great way of saying it. We always do that, no matter what it is. Millennials. I know tons of millennials who are great people, hard workers, really sharp people. But what's your view of millennials?
Lazy, entitled,
And you can take every group of people in the United States and lump them into that.
Look at Woodstock. Yeah. Old Woodstock, they're a bunch of pot smokers. But there's CEOs. There's a bunch of people.
As a matter of fact, the doctor that treated both of us was at Woodstock, and he is so far on the other side of what you would think somebody from Woodstock is.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he's
lazy. He'll always be like the Woodstock doctor.
Yeah, he's always Woodstock doctor.
When we talk about, like Kevin said, John Elite, it wasn't, we have John Elite coming into the show. It's like, hey, we got a mobster coming in.
Right.
He's going to be defined as a mobster his whole life now.
Great story about him. So the first time I ever talked to him, he's going off the rails on another mobster. How he's a phony, how he's no good, he's a liar. And he goes, the guy's only shot one guy. And I go, John, think about what you just said there. He's only shot one guy. So, I don't exactly want to say what I said after that, but that's how you get tied into all that stuff.
Yeah.
That we guys got to walk away from the labels, because you're Matt Cox, the author, you're Matt Cox, the painter. And that's the important stuff, because that's what you're doing right now.
But then you got Mike Dowd, who's always just going to be the dirtiest cop in New York City history.
Mike is just, God. I love hanging around him because he makes me feel normal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was going to say, it's funny what's normal to me. And me and, the other guys that are here, like we're having a normal conversation that to me we'll talk for 45 minutes about this. Oh, and then no, listen. That's not listen. One time, one upping each other, just kind of just goofing around. And then you read the comments and you see the views and you realize and people are going nuts and you're like, you have to kind of like, for us, we have to step back and go, I guess a lot of guys haven't gone into a bank, given them fake documents, showed them a fake ID, and walked out with a check for $250,000. Yeah, that is a little odd. Like I'm always curious or shocked when people find me fascinating or start saying, bro, what this was amazing and this and this and this. And I'm like, okay. But I'm looking at them thinking, that was just, for me, a natural progression. But I guess if you're a guy that works at Tire Kingdom, and you've never really been in trouble, then for them, that's you're shocking or amazing, or they're fascinated by you.
You were talking last night, and I was fascinated by half of the stuff you're saying.
Because you're actually looking at your life from the elevated position. Yeah. You're looking at your life from your story, but while you were doing it, it was just let's do this. And it's real fascinating because you just figured it out. Like you just figured it out. Even now, like that's how I see you. I don't see you as somebody who did that stuff. I see you as somebody who has figured everything out in their life. And I'm sure you're not, I'm positive you're not perfect, and I'm positive you still have your damage. Yeah, but me. You take a thought and you almost wish it into existence. Like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And you do it effectively, you do it successfully. And that's the admirable trait. And that's what I think is your defines your life now. That's how I see you anyway. Where me, I don't want to be defined as my shooting. I want to be defined as the cop who helps others get through it.
Right.
Mike and I sit down every week. We sit down with a variety of different guests just to talk about people's suffering and how to get through them and how to come out on the other side a little bit cleaner. Just visit thesufferingpodcast.com. There'll be links to all of our Instagram accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, all those things. And then our second portion is Dented Development Project. You just go to denteddevelopmentproject.com. We are a nonprofit organization, 501c3, trying to do our best in order to pay the help that we received forward.
Right.
So if you could go to that link and get involved, we'd greatly appreciate it.
What we do with Dented Development Project is we, any money we raise, we donate to families or officers and their families of first responders that are in need. If God forbid someone, is lost to suicide or something, we could throw them some money and so that's what we do with all the money that we raise for that. We don't take a penny out of that ourselves.
I was going to say, if you send all the links to, so all the links will be in the description section of YouTube, which is one of the reasons I was saying you should definitely, think about doing the YouTube thing.
Did you see what this guy looks like, Matt? You want me to put him on camera?
So you can put all in the description. We'll put all the links and everything. And and I've listened to podcasts and they're heart wrenching, but hard to listen to. Yeah. But they're great. They're actually very professional. Your voice on is. Not you, but
he turns my mic down.
You got a great voice.
He does. He's got a radio voice.
Yeah, he does.
He's got a voice for radio and a face for radio too. That's why we're not going video.
The funny now, when you listen to yourself, here's just a quick question I got for you. When you listen to yourself on your show, do you like your voice?
No, I never watch my shows. Almost never. Like I very seldomly do I watch. And it's funny when you mentioned the other thing about. Like we were talking about the, just basically like being like doing the things that I've done, in general. I was talking to Tommy one time, and he had made a comment about we were talking. I don't think we were on video, where he had said I had said something like, yeah, I said, this is what happened. This is how my life progressed, and I made a bunch of bad decisions. I said, I would have rather have been, teaching my kids, soccer team, and just been a normal guy. And I said, because, and been happy. And he said, he goes, oh, well, those guys think they're happy. And, but the truth is that's how I wish my life had progressed. Like he was like kind of mocking the average guy, the average middle class guy. But the truth is, like, I envy that guy. Like when I say Tire Kingdom or I talk about working at Walmart or something, and I say it, people always think I'm mocking them. But the truth is, I envy those people. I wish my life had taken that path.
It was that great scene that Robert De Niro does in The Bronx Tale.
Right.
When he's talking to Colodro, and he says, you think these guys are heroes, or you think these guys are courageous. Try getting up and going to work every day.
Right.
And those are the real heroes.
Right.
And
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I wish I could.
But you're doing it now.
I mean, I'm doing it now, but,
So what?
now that, I've trashed everything.
But you haven't, though. And again, this is the whole point of it. You haven't. You can start from there is a starting point from step 2. You just got to figure out a way to do it. And you do that. So just because you did what you did doesn't mean you can't do great things in the future.
Right. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I mean, but even just look at,
I'll let you in. I'll let you.
That you have. I mean,
yeah, no. I want to let you in to be part of the police world. You're crying, you sissy dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I forget. Was it Danny?
I just want to make you feel like a little bit of a
think Danny
family.
said something one time when I teared up or something, and I said, "Yeah, I cry easy." And he goes, "Well, why is that?" I go, "Because I'm kind of a pussy." That's what I mean. And he was like, "No, and he was like, yeah."
Hey, listen,
But you're a real person, though.
That's an emotion.
Yeah.
Crying's an emotion. Laughing, crying. If you show no emotion, that's when I believe you got no hope of turning your life around. When you show no emotion, you got no hope anymore. You're just gonna stick right in that rut you've been in.
Up until I went to prison, like I probably cried 3 times my whole life. Then I went to prison, and then really since I got out of prison, really I think not just that. Really after I got to 26 years, I've been crying like a bitch ever since.
That might be like releasing your past.
But again, so okay, there's a perfect point. You cried 3 times. Is it really the right way to do things? Or is what you're doing now the proper way to deal with your emotions?
No. This is the better way. Instead of getting pissed off and walking away and burying it and feeling like shit and not sleeping for 3 days and no.
Well, they say never let them see you cry. Well, why not?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah.
Enough of this male macho bullshit. We all have feelings, we all have emotions, and they're gonna get out sometimes.
And if you don't like me crying, I'll pop you right in the face. I mean, that's all it is. But thank you very much for having us here. I do truly, truly appreciate you having us on your show.
Absolutely, and letting us come in your house. This
is nice.
I just wish you ordered some better weather for us.
Yeah, we come all the way down to Florida. It's 50 and rainy. Come on.
And I got shorts on today because I said I'm in Florida. I'm wearing shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was ice on my windows. Like I don't know what to do. Like the other day, I immediately turned on. It was 30 degrees, and I hit the windshield wiper thing. Like we were going to the gym, and nothing came out. I go, and Jess looked at me like, "What are you, an idiot? It's 30 degrees. There's ice in they're frozen. What do you think's gonna happen?" Like, oh yeah, that's right, the ice thing. I forgot about that.
Well, very impressed by Jess, by the way. Very impressed. So I have a feeling why you're so successful now, because you got a good woman behind you.
Yeah, well, this month.
You need
the whole story.
Oh boy, I'm trying to help you, brother. I'm trying to help you, and you're burying yourself.
Well, you got beat down a little bit last night because everybody was blowing you up, and she was like, "Oh God, no, not again. Here we go."
Yeah, she knows. And I'll say, "Did you see that guy? He thought I was awesome." She's like, "He doesn't know you." So. Hey, I appreciate you guys watching, and if you like the video, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified, leave a comment in the comment section, and share the video to all your friends and family, and I appreciate it, and I will see you.